First question is where am I from? My name is Ernesto Ruelas-Inzunza. I am from Mexico. I was born in Monterrey, which is in the northeast of the country, but I was raised for the most part in Jalapa, which is in the Gulf Coast, in the state of Veracruz. I speak only Spanish and some English. I was interested in birds first. I wouldn't say I started being interested in birds at the beginning. I was interested in a lot of plants and animals. I was interested in bugs and in trees first because they were more accessible. You could touch them, you could see them up close. And then birds became really easy because you can identify them by just looking at them. You don't have to collect any specimens. So it was probably at about age 13 when I started looking at birds. A friend of mine and I went down to the coast where we were told that there was a migration of white-winged doves, and so we took a ride there, and somebody gave us 2 kestrels that had been shot. So we took them back home and we tried to take care of them. The birds eventually died, but we were more interested in kestrels, so we went out in the field and tried to find them in the wild, and we did. So we started observing them and see how they ate. We found some interesting things that we didn't know were worth recording. For example, kestrels hiding food, which is a behavior that hadn't been published at the time, and we found the paper several years after, but we didn't know what was worth noting and what wasn't. So that's how it all started. My interest in birds grew together with another of my friends, my friend Sergio Aguilar, with whom I went to middle school. We were very interested in camping and also in going out to look for trees and bugs and that sort of thing. And him and I started becoming more and more interested in birds. And then other friends around us became more interested in birds. So we formed, by age 15 or so, we had a little gang of about 6 or 8 people that were very, very much into it. My job title is as Raptor Population Index Project Manager. I did a lot of research over the last several years studying hawk migration, and hawk migration counts can be used to determine population trends. So my job right now is to help putting together a system to collect observations from many raptor migration monitoring sites and use those long-term data sets to assess population trends. So right now, me and a number of collaborators are working in putting together a major report on the status of North American birds of prey. Well, the first thing is when I started bird watching with my friends, we did not have binoculars. The access to, that was one of the limiting elements of going out and being a naturalist. We had magnifying glasses to go look at bugs, we could see the leaves of trees, but birds we had to observe at a certain distance, so we started noticing behaviors, habitat uses, and sometimes colors up close, but that was a limiting factor. Me and a friend, after a year or two, were allowed to borrow these 20-power pair of binoculars that my friend Sergio's father had for watching races and soccer games and that kind of thing. And as we know now, 20-power binoculars are really bad for watching birds. But we used them in the field. But before we did that, we started taking notes on what we observed. So we will start making sketches of birds that we saw in the hope that we could use those to identify birds. For example, a hawk that we will see flying. This is a journal of mine from 1994. So this is a hawk that I observed. So we will do a very schematic drawing, and then we'll go to the library because we didn't have field guides either. So we went to the library and tried to compare these two silhouettes that other authors had drawn. So we compared these notes to books and tried to figure out an identity for the species. But of course we didn't speak any English, so all the books that we could access were mostly Spanish books from Spain who don't have the same species as we do. So we did a lot of misidentifications. We knew that they were different species, but we thought that we were close by genus or family or something, and that's how we all started. In 1985, I believe, my father got me a copy of The Birds of Chiapas by Miguel Álvarez del Toro, which is a book published in 1973 with fairly poor drawings, but we used those to identify some of the birds. But again, I grew up in Veracruz. This is birds from Chiapas, so we were just getting hints and getting closer to things. So we learned by affinity. With time, a lot of these drawings became more schematic. These are notes from just recent notes from 1999. And I have to say one thing here. I have an awful memory. I can't remember two close related species that have one minor feature to tell them apart. So I just made a drawing and make some notes on what I observed, and then I will go back and use the field guides there and do it. When you're birding in Mexico, you are in trouble because Howell and Webb's book is about this thick, and you have to use another field guide such as the National Geographic or Sibley, who is about this thick. So you end up carrying two bricks that combined are probably about this high. You don't want to be carrying all that stuff. You already have binoculars and water and a field notebook or something. So I just continue making these schematic drawings and use them to go back home and compare them to the field guides. I take abundant behavior notes and habitats and where I observe birds. For example, I have this scheme here where I have the side of the forest here, then second growth vegetation, and then young second growth vegetation, and then a corn plantation. So by making detailed notes about where I found the bird, I could go back to the books and say like, well, this is a second growth vegetation associated with lowlands or something, and I could use these notes also to tell a species from notes in the field. So there are some interesting notes also. Some of them are useless, but good for learning, but of no use for science, but some of them are interesting. For example, these notes are from 1987. This is a drawing of the chest of two aplomado falcons, a juvenile female and an adult female. And at the time, the plumages of the two in books were differentiated, but because the juvenile female had heavy streaking on the breast, and the adult female was supposed to not have. But I knew that this bird was an adult because I had a bandit, and it had streaks in the chest. So this was a note that I made on those days, and later other people figured this out and put it in a book. So I was thinking that a lot of these drawings before, besides being of importance to learn just for my own personal use, could also contribute something to a little piece of information to learn to identify a bird. So I keep taking them.